If you've ever been on iRacing, then you know that just winning a race can be a big deal. But winning a major event is huge. Whether it's the Daytona 500 or 24 Hours of Le Mans, most sim racers can only dream of winning that big event. Any race like this is tough, but what if you held it at iRacing's toughest track, in iRacing's toughest car, and then invited some NASCAR stars, including a NASCAR Hall of Famer? Yeah, then you'd have the Rockingham 508, and yeah, this thing was brutal. And yes, I meant toughest oval car and toughest oval track. I know Super Formula is hard, leave me alone. Practiced a couple laps for this race by myself. I was really just making sure I knew the track inside and out as far as the bumps go, and really working on short and long run speed. I ran the bottom for practicing both, just so I knew how much I could push it without burning up the tires. I felt good until I joined an open practice session with other competitors for the event. Immediately, I realized I was in deep trouble when I saw a ton of cars running the top line. The top of most bigger oval tracks on iRacing can be decently quicker over one lap, but usually kill your tires too much to be viable during a really long race like this. But here, cars were finding whole tenths on the top, and they weren't falling off as quick as I'd expected. I immediately tried to replicate it, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm a bottom feeder and I really struggled. Eventually I set a better lap, but I wasn't able to execute on it consistently. I ultimately just decided to go back to the bottom, and I improved on my initial time compared to my first practice. But comparing myself to the field, I still felt like this would give me the best chance to qualify myself into the race. And yes, I said qualify into the race. We have more cars than there are starting spots. Qualifying for any race where you're not guaranteed a starting spot is one of the most stressful situations in racing. I've stared these down in real life and the simulator, and neither of them are any fun to be a part of. The only thing that makes it worse is going one by one by one. Having to sit there and watch people set insane laps and then watch others make the same mistakes you've been making in practice make things 10 times worse. I roll off 12th just hoping to put down any kind of decent time. Now the good news is that I should be one of the faster drivers in this race, and one of my better times would basically lock me in. I've also had a little more experience in these situations than most of the other competitors. I get a good run to the lap, I drive in deep and choose the bottom. It may not have as much potential, but I can easily get more out of it than anyone else, and it's far less risky than the top. Worst case scenario, I give up a dozen spot if everyone nails their lap, but I still make the show. Everything hooks up on both ends, and I come across the line.
It's cooking out here at the Rock. Swank gonna take and cut the apron, and he's going to go better than Busa, 25.509.
First? I knew that lap felt good, but I wasn't expecting that. Because so many cars have already qualified, this means I'm locked into the show. But I'm not even thinking about that anymore because it looks like I'm leading the field to grit. Well, that was a fun 25 minutes. Thanks, Tucker. It was a good lap, though. By the time we set the 43 car field, I'd qualified 4th. But I'd be starting 3rd because someone dropped out. It felt so good to put this behind me until I realized that was the easy part. Now I've got to go do battle with some of the toughest iRacers on the service, in the toughest car, on the toughest track for 500 laps. Not to mention NASCAR stars Dale Earnhardt Jr., Parker Kligerman, Carson Hocevar, Lane Riggs, and Garrett Smithley have all proven they're just as good in iRacing as they are in real life. So don't expect any iRacing Pro Invitational shenanigans from this crowd. I ran some more practice and got better on the high line for the race, but I don't think we'll use it too much during the first half. And that'll be the strategy here. This race is so long that just surviving the first 300 or so laps basically just punches your ticket for the real race at the end. Coming to the green, I'm just ready to ride and see. Oh, yeah, it's gonna be a long night. So it looks like the second place car just missed a shift and a bunch of cars got collected, but no one seems to have collected much damage. We get back going on lap 5. I'm able to keep up, but I lose 4 spots in the first 5 laps, dropping me down to 6. But I'm not worried because I'm playing the long game. I want to save my tires and make sure I have enough to go long in these runs. I lost a lot of ground to the leaders over the next 32 laps. Eventually, I lost even more ground and dropped back down to 8. But I'm still not worried because I know eventually their tires are going to fall off and I'll get them back. And plus, at this rate, I could do the entire race on one less pit stop. And I felt like that was starting to happen around lap 72. But just as we were getting ready to take back a ton of spots, the caution would come out for the second time on lap 77. Everyone would come in for tires, which killed the advantage I'd given up all that track position for. But we've still got 426 laps to get it right. The only new challenge is all those pro drivers at the back have made it through the pack. And now they're right behind me. Oh, and I should mention that in races using the 1987 rules, all the lead lap cars line up single file on the top, and all the lap cars fill in on the bottom and race for their lap back. So restarts in these races are a challenge just to survive, let alone trying to make up any meaningful track position. Even 20 laps into the run, we're negotiating lap traffic. I even lose position when two cars not on the lead lap hold me up while they're racing each other. I held position until the caution came out again on lap 112. Again, we'd all pit and be on even tires for another go. We'd take the green flag again on lap 116. Took a while to get back down to the bottom, even lost a spot in the process. I hung out in 10th for a dozen or so laps trying to save, but I felt like I was faster than the car out front. I kept looking for a pass on the bottom, but ended up giving up another spot on lap 136. After another 20 laps, I was losing a ton of ground to the 11 cars in front of me. So I started trying to migrate up the track. It did help to stop the bleeding, but wouldn't help me save too much more rubber. Even that wouldn't be enough to stop me from falling because I dropped to 14th on lap 157. Thankfully, the yellow would fly on lap 160 so I could stop the bleeding. We got back going again on lap 165, and it was just the same challenge trying to get around lap traffic. I lose 14th a lap later to the same thing. I don't know what's happening, because at this point I'm not necessarily trying to save, and I'm one of the slowest cars on track right now, and yeah, it's about to get worse. Well, I guess that's the fire I needed to get going. I started to find a little time on the bottom and ran down a few of the cars that started to pull away. But that's still not enough to pull away from this 88 car. He keeps trying to set up a pass by running high and using the overspeed to beat me into the next quarter. I'm able to run the high line and just barely stay ahead of him each time. On one hand, getting to run with one of your childhood heroes is really, really cool. But on the other hand, I am just holding on to dear life, trying to stay in this race. This battle and pressure went on for laps and laps and laps, but eventually he was able to drive it in deeper than me into turn 3, stay alongside, and use the speed he found on the top to pass me entering turn 1. I know I'm not the fastest here tonight, but I don't think he is either. I'm able to stay with this train and even cool off my tires from the last battle. Coming to lap 192, I get a great run out of turn 4 and get to his inside down the front stretch. I was able to run a light diamond in 1 and 2 and take back 15th. Oh yeah, did I mention this is a battle for 15th? And it's still not over. 10 laps later, he's still right behind me, and I have to start to find grip in new places. On lap 208, I'd have the same pressure out back, and I'd have to negotiate lap traffic and make the pass for 13th just to stay ahead. The only reason I ever got a break was because a caution came out for a wreck on the backstretch in lap 212. We got back going again on lap 218, and it's so tough to keep with the cars that are actually for a position with all the lap cars on the bottom. I was settling in, and then we had a spinner on the front. With his nose pointed to the bottom, I thought he might roll forward, so I dove to the bottom to get around as everybody slowed for the yellow. No pit stops this time as we took the green on lap 226. How are we not even halfway done? And how did any of us even agree to do this in the first place? Well, that's because this race is a charity event for the Dale Jr. Foundation. For the last 3 years, this race has been hosted to raise money for the foundation to support causes like Children's Hope Alliance, Feed Inc., and many more. They enable a lot of really great work, especially here in the Southeast. It's always a cool way to see the community come together and use their time and money to do something pretty cool. The link to support the foundation is down below, along with information on how you can take part in the next big race for charity like this. I think everybody's starting to realize what this stage of the race has turned into and getting really aggressive early on in the run with a caution likely just around the corner. And not even 10 laps later, they'd be proven right. Pit stops and back to it once again on lap 241 with a big checkup on the restart. We didn't get a spot and then get to saving and managing traffic, which is still just all lapped cars. I decided to run the top more as to not lose as much track position and because it didn't seem to punish tires the way I expected. I got a little bit too comfortable on lap 262 when I scraped the wall a little bit, but I mean, these things are tanks, it'll be alright. Lap 265, and I'm a little tight with pressure out back. Headed into turn 3, I try to compromise on running the high side and saving when I get absolutely packed off into the corner. This car was more sideways than any car on this track had any business being, but I was able to straighten it out and roll speed. Now the good news is that I'm in one piece, but the bad news is that my tires are absolutely roasted. Where's one of those cautions where you need it? We just had like 9. Okay, now even though it means that any car behind me is going to lose half a straightaway to the top 10, I am not letting this 28 car by out of pure spite. Now, luckily I wouldn't have him breathing down my neck for too much longer because guess who's back? He had a look on lap 279, but the bottom just wasn't strong enough for him to pull alongside down the backstretch, and I was able to hold on to the spot for now. Same move one lap later, so I went to the bottom since he wouldn't have the momentum to sweep outside. But I wasn't expecting a lap car on new tires 2 cars back rolling the outside to pass. This moved me off my line and burst the dam. I was able to slide back up to the top 1 exit and stop the bleeding. But these tires are completely ruined. The 28 takes advantage as well, with a slide job entering turn 1, which was honestly a pretty great move. A lap car got spun on lap 290 and it put me and these tires out of our misery. Green flag again on lap 296 and I got a terrible restart. Didn't miss any gears, just had a bad reaction. Probably just because I've been sitting here staring at this screen for the last 3 hours. We'd celebrate lap 300 1 lap early with a huge crash on the front stretch that killed Lane Riggs' car. We'll try it again on lap 304. No problems with lap traffic this time around. Only thing different about this run is I'm going to use my tires up a lot more. I never get the chance to realize my advantage because there's always a yellow. So I'm going to see if I can convert that to track position. The 16 is ripping the fence from the start of the run and making up tons of positions, but not even 3 laps later, we get back around him when he bogs down on the inside. Not a lot going on around lap 335, just running my race, but I think I'm using a bit more tire to keep up with a few of the cars in front. And about 20 laps later, I'd realized just how screwed I am in terms of tire wear. I've lost a ton of time to the cars out front. It's not going to get any better. It would be 33 more laps before I lost any more spots to whoever's left in this heavily wounded field. Even though I'm still in the top 10, I'm going to need to make a play to get back in this race. Right now, the only thing I could do is pit early. It'd give me a chance to get off these tires and start finding some lap time. The bad news is that if I pit now, I wouldn't be able to make it to the end of the race on fuel. Even though I was the one that decided to push harder this run and bet on a caution, I decided to do it again. On lap 394, I decided to bring it down pit road for 4 fresh tires and fuel. No penalties, no incidents, and I'm back out on track in 13th. I start running as conservatively as I can, which I'm happy to do after taking off those tires. The big challenge at this point in the race is just running your race. There are so many lap cars ahead, and cars with damage, several lap downs, and cars that are actually racing for position, and they're all mixed in together. And even though, yes, this is just a video game, staying locked in for a 4-hour race in an hour-and-a-half long green flag run can really be a challenge. Moving on to lap 440, and those tires don't feel so new anymore. And I'm getting passed for my place on the lead lap by the leaders who are on 18 lap fresher tires. At this point on lap 445, I'm still in the same boat I was in earlier, just hoping for a caution so I can fill my tank and not come in for a pit stop under green. But on lap 458, I have to give up hope of a caution and come to pit road just to cut my losses and hopefully find a way to maintain my top 10 finish. Just 2 tires this time though. I didn't need a full fuel load and these pit stops take so long in the 87 car. It's just really frustrating that I bet wrong on strategy multiple times during this race. I bet we'd get 1 more caution in 200 laps, and the crowd that couldn't make it to 1 green flag pit stop in 300 went and proved me wrong. But to be honest, I needed to have been a little faster so I didn't have to gamble to finish well. At this point, I'm just pushing as hard as I can for whatever I can get back. I'm in 14th with 40 to go and have the best tires on the track. On 462, I get 1 of my laps back by passing the leader. 3 laps later, I get 2 more positions back relatively easy. On this run, I'm trying to move forward without interfering with league lap battles. But on lap 477, they were stacked up on both lanes, and I had to take it 3 wide up the middle so I didn't lose too much time. At least in that exchange, I was able to get up to 11th. I had a huge scare with 11 to go though, when one of the leaders got loose in front of me and I barely missed hitting him. I've made up a ton of ground, but with 5 to go, I'm still 9 seconds back behind the 10th place car. And in the end, I bring it home in 11th. I'm disappointed with the end result of this race, but there's still a lot of positives to take away from this whole event. Just making the show and qualifying so well was a win for me at least. And just surviving the distance of a race was a miracle, because there were a ton of cars that ran into much bigger issues. The underlying issue was that I wasn't the fastest car on track, and I had to make some strategy calls to put myself in contention, and they didn't play out no matter how unlikely that was. Junior would end up finishing 6th, making my career record against him 0-2. That first matchup's a story for another time, but I'm eyeing up a rematch sooner than some of y'all might think. Thank you guys so much for watching. Huge shout out to Blake McCandless for putting this whole event together. He does so much for the iRacing community and specifically the 87s community. So if you're looking for a Coke Series driver to follow or you want to be a part of an event like this in the future, be sure to go follow him. And also make sure you're subscribed. I've got a lot of projects in the work for 2025, but I have a non-existent upload schedule. So if you want to make sure you don't miss out on the next time I upload, please subscribe and I will see y'all in the next one.